Hello. Uh, we're back. Gonna talk about Sentinels of Light today, because there's a lot to talk about. I was very angry about this at one point.
I like Sentinels of Blight.
Yeah, I'm here with my friends today as well. I don't know how they want to be introduced, so they can introduce themselves if they want to.
Hey, good boy.
All
I'm
right.
also here.
Ethan.
All right.
Pog.
This is Ethan.
I'm Pringle Pop. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or Amoeba, I guess.
I mean, you could be whatever you want to be, bro.
Yeah.
This isn't real. Your eyes aren't real. Jaden
So
Smith.
let's talk about this.
2016.
Let's talk about Riot
Guys,
admitting.
let's
talk about Riot
address the
admitting
most
this. Yeah.
important part of this. Why is Thresh so small and
Yeah, man,
inside of
he's so
Diego's
tiny.
shoulder?
I
Oh,
think this
because
is
they
canonical size.
fucking-
This is how big they
That's
all
his
are.
cannon size. Yeah.
Yeah.
A Senna's like
Diego's-
8 feet taller than every
Viego's
other
like a
person.
giant. Yeah, Viego's the biggest for sure.
Well, yeah, but Viego being big would I could believe that.
I mean, it'd make more sense than what he actually is in game, which is just like a random, like, hot
I feel
20-year-old.
like Thresh would be less intimidating if he was like 3 inches tall.
He might be more, I don't know. What if he
Why
climbs
was
inside your ear
Vex
and kills
in
you?
this picture?
Because Vex, was fake. That's why.
Okay.
Vex got hella disrespected in this event, so it
I
doesn't
don't
matter.
think Vex is actually canonical.
Pike isn't in this picture either.
No, most of the
Diana.
people aren't. Just the
How
people
did
who got the
Graves
expensive
make the
skins,
cut?
okay?
I'm actually everyone here kind of makes sense except for like Graves is definitely one of the characters that shouldn't be in this picture.
But Graves has the legendary skin. He got in the splash art. That's how it works.
Yeah, yeah, but-
Graves' skin is the legendary skin?
Yeah, Graves and Vayne both have legendaries.
But every other character here is important to the plot except for Graves.
I mean,
Also,
to be
Graves
fair,
is a
Vayne's hardly
travesty that
important.
shouldn't have been given the skin because it doesn't make any sense. He's just like a criminal with
All
a
right.
gun.
All right,
All right.
hold on. We're gonna get to what this is at least.
Okay.
So basically, Riot admitted that it was a bad event. I didn't actually think they would. Admittedly, I thought they were just gonna be like, nah, it's canon. It's all canon, and it's
I'm
good.
pretty sure they were pretty sure that they knew it was a bad event because everybody hated it, but I didn't expect
Well-
them to release a formal apology.
I'm glad they reached that point. So anyway, hey all. As the year winds down and we reflect on 2021, we wanted to talk about what we learned from the Sentinels of Light event this past summer. We want to own up to the fact that Sentinels missed the mark, and how we'll use our learnings to help future big events. I love that way of, like, saying sorry to where it's just like, we missed the mark. It's good.
It was accurate.
Yeah, man. Lucian missed the mark because he's a 42% win rate ADC, and he can't hit anyone without dying. Easy.
Just stay DC.
I'd like to see Riot respond to like their like in-house like sexual harassment complaints with like, oops, sorry, we missed the mark with this one.
Yeah. Oops, sorry, our employee policies might have missed the mark slightly.
Oops.
We'll use this as a benchmark to make better decisions next time.
Oh my god. Oh no.
Anyway, so this is a long one. Alright, good. Event metagames need to be accessible to regular players, not just super engagers. By the end of the event, they kind of fixed this already, so I don't necessarily need them to apologize to me for this, but originally they made it to where you had to play like 10 games as an ADC to unlock the next thing, or like 10 games as a jungler, or you had to place 200 wards or some dumb crap.
It was alright for me because I didn't. I already knew the event was bad, so I just didn't do it.
Oh, Pog. Yeah, easy. I didn't know yet, okay? Because the original part with Vayne was like, okay. So I was like, oh, you know, it might be
Well, I
good.
did the first part, and then I realized the event was bad.
I think the real thing that made it really hard. I actually didn't have too much problem completing it, but I guess I probably was benefiting from the thing that they put in later.
Mhm.
But I think personally, the thing that really made it difficult for some people is that at the very beginning there was only a couple of ways to earn points, and if your playstyle wasn't conducive to doing those things, then you'd get like stuck behind because you needed to unlock more and more ways to get points overall.
Yeah.
But if you never got on the train to begin with, it was very hard to catch up.
So, you know, I agree with, I mean, what they're saying here, though. You know, they have to make it to where if you're just playing like a couple of games a day, you can still see the lore in the event, you know? Which is good. But yeah, like, going back to it being bad, though. Like, once you got to Freljord and you met Olaf, you were like, oh, I'm wasting my time. And then you didn't have to do it anymore. It was easy. It was like, it was a very simple decision.
Exactly.
Narrative and character tone need to match player expectations. Yeah, keep simultaneous forms of storytelling consistent. Yeah, please do that. Only incorporate faceless player stand-in characters when it makes sense, rather than by default. Yeah, please do that. Don't bend champion characterization. Yeah, like, don't do that. Thanks.
Well, they almost certainly did that because the first time they did it was in the event before.
Yeah,
and
because they could do it. And
it worked well and was a good idea.
It's just strange to me, though.
Well, I'm almost positive what happened was they just... Some, like, higher-up money guy was just like, this went well, do it again. It was awesome.
Yeah.
And then they didn't... Then they just gave it to the skins team and not the lore team because that's how they did it in the
Spirit Blossom.
In the Spirit Blossom event.
Yeah.
And it was a bad idea this time around, but they didn't like it by the lore team, which they should have.
Yeah. Yeah, and because in Spirit Blossom, all of those characters weren't, like, technically the same characters, so it didn't matter to me that, like, Cassiopeia or, like, Yasuo were completely different characters. But, like, in this, it's like, oh, this is actually Pike. Oh, this is actually Olaf. It's like, bruh.
Also, the journey in the Spirit Blossom event was a lot more focused on just, oh, this is what you're experiencing in the realm. There's nothing that has, like, long-term impacts.
True.
Whereas... The Ruination was probably the biggest, most impactful lore event in the actual, like, browser. In the story of League that has been going on so far. Like,
it was like the first thing that ever moved the story forward.
Yeah.
Yeah,
pretty
like,
much.
the Ruin King's been built up since before the League lore was changed to what it is today. So it's like, I don't know. Also, a random side note, Viego as a concept was kind of a big disappointing. I know people all have, like, their different opinions on how they feel about Viego and how his design is and stuff, but, like...
for me, beyond the mist.
Bro, he should have been cool.
He should have been, like, an epic monster guy.
They were just
like
a
hot, sexy Spanish man.
Yeah, he just wants love.
I will counterpoint with this design note, which is, if you want to do monstrous Ghost King, that already exists in League. Its name is Mordekaiser.
That is true.
Literally, that archetype is basically in. So I kind of feel, I get why they wanted to do something different. Personally, I would have been okay with something more along the lines of Mordekaiser than what we got. But, you know, I could understand why they'd want to diversify the cast a little bit.
Listen, I want Crazy Monster Ghost King, but I do have to admit, as much as it pains me, I do kind of like Viego's, like, what he looks like. Gotta be honest.
I mean, I think he looks cool. Especially in lore, they made him look really sick.
You give him his freaking... his kit, bring the kit into it, no, and then we got some problems. But I actually kind of and he's got that radical, epic, like, 90-foot-long claymore.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Also, the last point here is...
Also, he says, my queen!
They need to respect scope. Because in the Riot client, they can only do so much, so they're like, oh, we'll use it to, like, add detail and stuff to their lore. but not actually have entire giant lore-moving events that are just built into random client slideshows, and that I kind of appreciate.
Well, I mean, they could do a little bit.
Well, yeah, I mean, they say they add color and detail, so I mean...
Yeah. So I mean, they could push some things, sir. They could have done that, but, like, not pushed the whole lore forward, just done it from, like, Lucian's perspective or something. That would have been cool.
Alright. So Sentinels of Light was the culmination of League's first multi-month narrative event. Beginning with Ruination at season start, this overall arc was our biggest expression of core Runeterra lore and League in ages. We tied together multiple new champion launches, Viego, Gwen, Akshan, originally Vex before her delay, and released skins depicting champions as they appeared during the events of the story. We also want to push further on the success of Spirit Blossoms in client visual novel and character interactions, using them as a way to let players interact with the Sentinels during the fight against Viego and add immersion to the standard event progression experience. So, you know, that's what they were trying to do, I guess.
Yeah, I got that.
I think the biggest problem...
I think it was a good idea.
Actually, not even the biggest problem. I think just, like, a problem is they tried to tie Viego, Gwen, Akshan, and Vex to the story. But none of these characters existed before, and no one cared about any of these characters.
Yeah.
So they were trying to, like...
And then there were characters.
Yeah, they were trying to move forward this big lore event that characters already in the game had stakes in. And you were waiting for their stories to be moved forward, but instead they decided to do it with these new characters instead, so it was like,
Yeah, which would have been cool if the new characters, like, were connected to the old characters, like, if Lucian and Senna, like, knew Akshan or something?
Yeah,
or,
but
like,
they didn't.
If Akshan was, like, this older guy that, like, trained Lucian, that would have been epic.
That would be sick. But
or if anyone, like, knew Yorick or something, or Maokai.
Yeah.
If like Hecarim and Callisto were relevant to them in any way.
But no, they were just there. So it was like,
I'm still pretty sure nobody knows who Akshan is. Like, nobody in lore still doesn't know who Akshan is.
You know, they saw him. He snuck up and shot Viego once and won the whole fight.
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest. I think honestly one of the biggest disappointments coming from this event is not even so much its implementation, but I think the actual story is kind of a letdown.
It is.
And I could go into more detail that later. We've got a lot of stuff to get through here. But just in general, I don't think that it has a correct build-up and payoff. It doesn't really... it has these things that are supposed to be big moments that haven't been properly built up, and I think that's the biggest issue with the event.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Almost certainly. I agree.
Event progression. Wow. Okay, this is what they learned now. Here we go. Gotta warm up the old reading voice. With Spirit Blossom in 2020, super high engagers completed all of Spirit Bonds in the first 2 or 3 days and then spent the rest of the event grinding Spirit Petals. For Rise of Sentinels, we wanted to narrow that story progression gap between hardcore engagers and normal engagers. We designed Rise of Sentinels so progress increased every week, meaning hardcore engagers would still complete the early content faster, but normal engagers would be mostly caught up by the time we reached the finale. Thought this would be a cool thematic representation of the Sentinels' momentum rising as they bolstered their ranks. Ultimately, we ended up patching the event partway through to greatly increase progression per game played, which removed the impact of deciding which regions to visit first, as well as basing progression around the Sentinels to begin with. Which, you know, is true. They did make it to where you only had to, like, play a game, and then you would get an entire story, like, levels. On one hand, this was because we flat out missed the event tuning. Not even the hardcore engagers were progressing at the rates we designed for. On the other hand, backloaded progression was a risky choice from the start. Even when tuned well from an event-long perspective, slow progress in the first few weeks can feel demoralizing. Normal engagers in particular can end up feeling like they have no shot at completing the story. Our takeaway is that the Spirit Bomb's backloaded grind was a better event experience, even though players completed the main portion of the event at radically different times. Faster upfront progress means that if you're playing at a regular pace, you're still immersed in the story and world from the start. You can quickly get a sense for whether the event interests you, and if it does, feel confident that you'll complete the primary stuff by the end. For both regular engagers and hardcore folks, we also need to be more diligent on our tuning to be absolutely certain players will progress at the intended rate. I know for me personally, at least like for Spirit Blossom, I played a decent amount and I didn't finish all of Spirit Blossom.
Yeah, me too. I think one of the things. Oh, you know,
You did. That's true.
I got some of the petals, I think, but I never actually managed to like level with any of the petals. I never managed to. I think you needed petals to S.
Yeah.
Connections.
Yeah.
Anyway, or I might have done one of them, but I think that there's a really weird need for Riot to have the people who are trying a lot and doing a lot of grinding out games to like get all this content, and the people who are just playing casually. Is there really a need to have them go through the content at the same rate? I don't know why they feel the need to like push for this ideal of having the people who grind out the content to get the content at the same rate as the normal folk.
I don't think that's what they're saying. They want the people who to grind out the content to have content to do. So if you do it a lot, there's still like reason for them to play the whole event.
Yeah, but they also said at the end that
if someone's playing the game that much, I think they're playing it because they like the game.
It's better for the people who are grinding to run out of content than the people who aren't to not get any of it.
Absolutely,
but I think their point is that they want the people grinding out to still have content. I don't think it matters.
That's why they did what they did with the Ruination, because they wanted that.
But the feeling that the people grinding out content would be doing it anyway. People are playing League that much, they're playing it because they're climbing.
Because they're playing League, yeah.
Yeah.
It's not
but though I don't think those people don't matter at all.
Yeah,
they
but
probably don't give a
those are usually the people who are done, like with Spirit Blossom in a couple days, are probably the people who are just grinding League. Like, and the people who aren't doing it are probably the people who are just like, oh, I'm only logging in to read some Spirit Blossom. And I'm playing a couple games to try to get to that next one, but you never finish the event because it's just too many games and you don't want to play League, you know? You just want to read the lore.
I was grinding out the Spirit Blossom event and I wasn't, like, laddering.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't finish Spirit Blossom for that reason, pretty much. I wanted to do Spirit Blossom, but I didn't actually want to play League. So...
Yeah, I was having tons of fun grinding it out because I was just playing, like... I think I was just playing like a ton of Skarner games and what is it? The Nexus Blitz.
For Sentinels of Light though, for me, I was playing probably more than at Spirit Blossom. And before they made the change, I had gotten to like the first region split. Barely. And then after that I like completed the entire story and like half as many games as it took me to get there, so.
I mean, I don't really care about this. I didn't think it was a huge issue because I probably would have finished the event if I wanted to, but I didn't. And I finished the Spirit Blossom event fine. But I think the front loading it, I did kind of feel that way where I played the Sentinels of Light event and like nothing happened. So it was like, oh, what's the point in grinding it out? So I think front loading it a bit is a good way to do it. Because in the Spirit Blossom event, you played it a little bit, and you like got things, and then you got to pick stuff, which is cool.
Alright, so the next thing. Gating lore behind gameplay. Man. Yeah, I mean, this is kind of what we were just talking about, but while related to the last topic, this one warrants its own call-out. We gated Rise of the Sentinel story behind event progression so you would feel like a part of the fight against Viego. In part because of the harsh event tuning. In part because of the harsh event tuning, but also a general outcome of progression lock design. Players had to play more games than usual to access the story. Many folks without extra time to play League never experienced the conclusion themselves and had to rely on outside sources to fill them in. Moreover, it positioned gameplay as an undesirable obstacle lore fans had to overcome to what they really wanted, worsening their relationship to League rather than improving it. Yeah, it's me. Our takeaway, that lore should be accessible, especially canon Runeterra lore. We'll avoid putting major canonical lore beats behind significant grinds in the future, and metagames like Rise of the Sentinels won't be the only way to access the lore.
I like the bit in here where they basically admit that the worst part about playing League, or the worst part about League of Legends is actually playing the game.
Yeah. Look, the lore team knows that they do a good job. Alright? They're like, we know you just don't want to play, and you just want to read what we write, so...
Okay, I say that as somebody who actually likes the gameplay, so, but...
I liked it.
I get it. Like, if you want to play the game, but you want to get the story, but you're done playing League for the day, you have to play the game more if you want to read the story.
Yeah.
Or if you just, don't have the time. But
especially, if you want to sit down and grind, and, maybe you do want to grind out some levels because you want to get to the lore, but then you have, a really bad game where you get auto-filled into jungle and you go, 0-8 and your team flames you all game, and you're like, well, I don't want to play, but I still want to read the lore.
Yeah. I think it'd be cool, like I was saying earlier, if they showed the event from Lucian's perspective or something, then you'd get a unique perspective on the lore.
Mm-hmm.
But then the lore team would, on League Universe, release everything in different stories and whatnot, so you could get it all, or a big video or something, so you could get it all, but you could still get the same thing. You get a unique perspective and more insight into a character specifically.
Yeah.
But you wouldn't grasp all the moving parts. You wouldn't necessarily know all the things Viego's doing or all the things Vex is doing because you're only getting it from Lucian's perspective or whatever.
True. Alright. Anyway, this next part is a little strange. I mean, it's not strange how they worded it, but it's strange to talk about. But multiple versions of the story. This section will be tricky since it's about the overall Riot landscape, but we're only directly speaking to League PC's portion of how this story was told. Rise of the Sentinels in the client and the cinematics on the web. For a long time, League PC was the only game shipping story content for the League universe. This made it simpler to keep our narrative and storytelling consistent. Though even then, we had challenges. As League has grown, more teams are telling stories in the League universe. We didn't put the correct systems in place during that growth to maintain narrative cohesion among all these teams. During Sentinels, we released 4 versions of the story through Rise of the Sentinels, the Ruination Before Dawn and Absolution cinematics, Wild Risk in Client Sentinels HQ, and their Steadfast Heart comics. Each of these teams made changes to the story to fit their specific storytelling vehicle, but we tried to keep the same core story the same. For the sake of final clarity, here is the core story. Okay, so this is what is actually real in canon that happens. Thresh resurrects Viego. Honestly, I must have missed that. I didn't even know Thresh resurrected.
I was actually going to comment on that. I don't remember there ever being a mention of Thresh being the... I thought Viego was just always hanging out.
Oh, I knew he was asleep for a while.
Yeah, he was in stasis or something.
But I didn't know Thresh woke him up.
Okay.
But I didn't know Thresh resurrected him.
And someone who kind of reads the lore, so I'm a little surprised I didn't know that, but hey, I guess. Viego attempts to take the piece of Isolde's soul inside Senna, but Senna and Lucian get away. Alright, so that's the first cinematic. They travel across Runeterra, trying to stop Viego from collecting pieces of Isolde's soul. They encounter ruined champs and recruit new Sentinels along the journey. Alright, but who the ruined champs are, and who the Sentinels are not specified, so they literally could be anyone. It does not have to be Graves and Pike and Olaf.
I hope it's not Graves from Pike and Olaf canonically.
They didn't say it was.
Any sense?
So I'm gonna say it's not canon.
I think Graves could be a fun, like you could kind of make him work. It would be stupid still.
Sentinel Viego.
Olaf and especially Pike makes literally no sense. Pike is literally an undead.
Yeah.
Right? Like he's already an undead.
Yeah, he is.
He's literally the Sentinels are like.
He's like a thrall to Nagakibora.
Look, he died. He just got resurrected by a god.
Yeah, but he's in like a weird gray area.
So he's not the right type of undead, so the Sentinels won't kill him. Like,
look, I'm just saying.
Be there. It doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make any sense. Anyway, yeah, let's keep going.
Akshan is one of the Sentinels, so Akshan is canon. I would hope so, because he got released.
Unfortunately,
I know, right? He had been training under his mentor Shadia, the Lost Sentinel. This is in Akshan's lore. This is something
I didn't read that.
It's actually pretty okay. Shadia was recently murdered by a Shuriman warlord, and when we met Akshan, he was attempting to kill Shadia's murder with Absolver to resurrect her. I assume that means, in canon, he didn't do that yet. So there you go.
I assume it was like, he was gonna do that, and then the world got Viego'd.
Yeah, and then probably Lucian and Senna walked up and they're like, yo, bro, what's up? Yeah, because he was one of the ones that were recruited, so that had to have been the case. As Viego's quest nears completion, the Sentinels take the fight to him at the Shadow Isles. Senna surrenders to Viego the piece of Isolde. I don't know which one's right.
It's Isolde.
Inside her, insists it's the only way to save the world. Senna dies. Viego completes Isolde's soul and resurrects her. Isolde tells Akshan to kill her, resurrecting Senna since the cause of death was Isolde's soul. Which is kind of bullshit, but okay.
It's bullshit.
The Sentinels defeat Viego. Thresh siphons the souls from the Ruination, gaining enough power to restore his human form and leave the Shadow Isles. I didn't really want Thresh becoming human to be canon, but okay, I guess I'll take it.
So one thing I'd like to bring up with this, I think the biggest issue I have with the story, I mean, it's a pretty simple and not like a very interesting story anyway. The biggest problem I have is that they don't establish Akshan and the magical gun that resurrects people early enough in the story for it to feel like they basically introduce it right before they actually go to the Shadow Isles. So there's no like wind up for it. And even then, the gun, like, it's a gun with very specific rules attached to it, which is basically if you killed somebody who just killed somebody else, then you bring the person who they killed back. And then it seems like it's the only time it's actually used in the story is it's not even like really following those rules. Because Viego killed.
Yeah.
It wasn't Isolde who killed.
They shouldn't have put the Absolver in at all. It doesn't make any sense. Why does it resurrect people? They just made it up because they thought it would be a plot device.
Well, they could have actually made it interesting if they did something like this. They brought back Isolde, but if it had been established earlier, it would have made it a much more strong narrative beat. And if it had been used to like maybe even save some of these Sentinels and convince them to join the Sentinel party. Say for instance, Pike like gets, I don't know, not Pike, but like let's say Graves like literally gets killed in like, you know, by GP or something, and then they like fucking kill GP with the Absolver, and then Graves was like, oh, let me join here because you guys seem like really cool. Like,
or they could have killed like TF
the gun more,
right? And then
they
could have, you know, like then
Graves would
join them to get TF resurrected.
Right. Exactly. See, that would have been a really strong. Actually, that would have definitely meant great. Like that would have meant Graves joining the
Sentinels
a much
mean
stronger
something?
point.
Yeah, for sure.
And look, we just came up with that in like literally 2 seconds, just thinking about it in a just a basic narrative framework. I imagine if the people in the lore team had gotten their hands on this, they could have done something really interesting with it. But instead, we end up with this really like mishmashy, just washed out weird plot that doesn't really have.
I mean, I think the Absolver is bad anyway, but they definitely could have made it feel less like cheaty, less like, oh, I showed up with the plot device to win. They could have actually established in a way where I probably still wouldn't have liked it that much, but I wouldn't have hated it so much.
There is something interesting to note here, though. Which is the first thing being Gwen and Vex are not mentioned a single time in any of this what actually happened in the Ruination thing.
That is actually very interesting. I didn't even catch that, yeah.
Also, in case either of you didn't know this, neither is Maokai or Yorick or Kalista or Hecarim. Yeah, I know.
Or Rookie.
That's true. But in the Wild Rift version of the story, Gwen isn't even in it.
Oh, because they didn't put her in the game?
No. So she's not in the story at all.
Gwen's fake.
Which is interesting. It makes you think, like,
bro,
why?
If Gwen's non-canon, why couldn't Akshan be non-canon?
Because Akshan had to kill Isolde and had to bring Senna back to life.
He didn't!
And the worst part is, if I had to choose one of those 3 characters to be non-canon, it would have been Akshan. I don't care about Akshan at all. Like, I get Gwen actually has ties to the story. It's basically the core soul of Isolde.
Yeah.
And Vex is Vex. They kind of giving Viego more underlings is impactful, but adding like another Sentinel with, you might as well have just given Lucian the plot device, and that could have been like a big plot point, is he has to go get the plot device.
That would have mattered more.
Yeah,
I might have been able to care about the Absolver if Lucian had it.
Right?
Because we already liked Lucian.
It feels unearned. Well, it feels unearned. It's just like, oh, this guy comes in and he already has the magic solution. Whereas if we had the character go out and get the magic solution themselves, and maybe that could have been the trade-off that they got from Thresh when Thresh came in and talked to them at that one point in the plot. You know? They could have been like, hey, here's the Absolver. Then Lucian has to go risk his life to get it, and he's like pissed at Thresh, but then he realizes near the end, oh, I can actually use this to save the day, but then it also plays into Thresher's plans. Anyway, sorry, I'm getting off track. We should continue going.
Got it. An example of a non-core but still impactful detail that was changed to fit the medium was Rookie. Rookie was never given a canonical appearance, or gender, or age in Rise of Sentinels, so the cinematics team adjusted the story to make sense without Rookie, and they had no way of showing. Even for those of you who only experienced the League PC content, those adjustments made it unclear which version of the story was the real one. The other versions were supposed to be. Oh, and what the other versions were supposed to be. This led to a poor experience, especially for hardcore lore fans, who the main players we were building the Sentinels for. Takeaway is, simultaneous forms of storytelling that supports the same lore moments need to be consistent rather than optimized for individual projects. It's alright if one storytelling form can only tell a part of the story due to scope limitations, but that part must be consistent with the whole story that's told elsewhere.
Yes.
Fair.
I think that's a good takeaway, yeah.
Champion inclusion and visual novel scope. Alright, here we go. They're gonna talk about Maokai and Yorick. Here we go, baby. We wanted the Sentinels of Light to feel like a ragtag group of unlikely heroes from all over Runeterra that Lucian and Senna recruited by happenstance rather than an ideal team carefully assembled over the course of years. While this premise works on paper, we weren't able to develop all the champions enough to succeed in practice. Yeah, fair. Even with only about a dozen main characters in Rise of the Sentinels, many of them felt like they were kind of just there. Players never really got the ragtag sense we intended, so the unlikely inclusions felt like bad fits, and champions who better fit Sentinel ideals, Braum, like conspicuous absences. Yeah, like Braum over Olaf. I mean, true.
Yeah.
In retrospect, the scope of a global ruination was far beyond what we could deliver in a 5 to 10 hour visual novel. Most of the experience came in the form of dialogue between a handful of characters which didn't lend itself to a world-encompassing battle. For example, many of you wanted to know what key leaders from major regions like Swain or Jarvan were doing, even if they wouldn't join up with the Sentinels. The Sentinels didn't directly encounter them, so the visual novel didn't have a satisfying way to include them. The global scope put immense pressure on the story and roster as well. Visiting every region and recruiting a Sentinel from each meant we couldn't spend too much time in any one region or include too many of its champions. Shadow Isles suffered from this the hardest. Lore fans were felt wondering about Yorick, Maokai, Kalista, Hecarim, there you go, who all have ties to the Ruination storyline, but were only minor characters or absent entirely. I think Hecarim and Yorick showed up for like 2 frames, but our takeaway.
And Viego was like his entire storyline.
Yeah.
You know, whatever. It's not important.
Yeah. Yeah, Yorick literally showed up to give up the maiden. That was it. He was like, "Oh, a piece of his oldest soul's in the maiden. Here you go."
Them with the water of the blessed isles, but
yeah, but also canonically, if Yorick does that, he will die.
Well, he didn't give it all up. He gave just a bit of it up.
Yeah, I guess, but
like a drop on each one. Because I think canonically, otherwise, if you enter the Shadow Isles, you just like instantly become a ghost.
The mist will corrupt you and you'll die. That's why he isn't corrupted. But it's also why he keeps it. He keeps it so he does keep it so he can give it to people. He's saving it so he can use it to save. So that's not necessarily.
I mean, it's not like it's something he wouldn't do. It's just I thought it was dumb.
But I think ultimately, I think that they're very much right with the things feeling like bad. I think that a lot of these characters who felt like bad fits in the moment, if you had given it a proper amount of time and character development, I think that Graves becoming more mature and like, especially with we were talking about with the TF being basically killed, and then he wants to bring TF back with the Absolver, all that stuff, that could have been very powerful. You could have evolved the characters, and actually this ragtag group being brought together because of like happenstance and then becoming an actual group would have been a good story. But just a bunch of strangers staying a bunch of strangers pretty much and not actually changing or growing doesn't lead itself or make itself a good story.
Let's not forget about Sentinel Rengar though.
Yes, what?
I did forget about Sentinel.
I had forgotten about that. Yeah, I actually had.
I think another big problem with the ragtag feel was it didn't feel like it was what they were saying is they wanted it to feel like they had to pick these people, not out of necessity, not because they were the best. But it didn't really feel like they were picking them out of necessity. It felt like you were randomly walking around, and then they walked through all of Demacia, which apparently had no one in it but Vayne, and Shyvana. Yeah. And then they were like, "Oh, look, it's Vayne. Hey, you want to come work with us?" And she was like, "I don't know. Let me think about it." Yeah. There wasn't like a sense of urgency, like you have to come with us and save the world. Or Vayne was like, "I'm coming with you to save the world. Someone has to do something." It was like, let us mosey through Demacia and Freljord and be like, "Oh, is that Olaf? Let's have a 90-minute conversation with him." Oh, Vayne showed up. Let's move on.
I agree. I think that if the character should have realized that the world is at stake and then work together for their own disparate reasons, selfishly, but have a common goal. Because otherwise, it doesn't really make any sense if like you'd even throw that group together.
Also,
because you spent like a long time trying to convince Olaf to come with you. It didn't feel like, oh, we had to pick Olaf. They stood there and they were like, "Olaf, you have to come with us. Let's go."
Olaf
and Olaf was like, "I'm busy. I don't give a damn."
But I think another thing that went towards making it not feel like it worked is that ultimately everyone who joined the Sentinels were champions in League of Legends. So it's not like none of them could have done anything against the zombies and they were just there because they needed the help. Like, Diana doesn't join your team because you just need the help. Like, she could have soloed the event by herself. But
I don't know about that.
she literally could have. If you, like, read into the lore of the power scaling
Yeah,
of, like,
Diana's
how
canonically
strong, like, Diana and
hugely
Leona
powerful.
are.
And her sword that she gives up for the is definitely a downgrade. Her
Yeah,
sentinel weapon is
that's
definitely
Yeah, so
But-
it's... Not to mention she finds her people that she was looking for in her lore the entire time after 2 seconds.
A horrible scene. I don't even know if the Lunari even exist. I've been looking for them my entire life. You Lunari walking around the corner. Diana, is that you?
Anyway, moving on. Our takeaway is that metagames and visual novels can only go so far in playing off a big lore event. A feature like this can add color and detail to lore beats like how Council Archives supported Arcane, but it can't carry the entirety of a massive story by itself. If we had done a story smaller in scope, maybe only including a couple regions with tighter and better developed cast of characters, we could have told a more satisfying slice of the overall whole. Dedicated storytelling mediums are better suited for broad-reaching narratives. Fair. Including Rookie. The player stand-in character was a tool we used in Spirit Bonds, and we use it against Sentinels to give players a front seat of the action. Spirit Bonds made sense as an experience and centered around your personal interactions because the Ionian spirits weren't pre-established, so you literally were meeting them for the first time. Unlike Spirit Bonds, though, Rise of Sentinels was more about bringing the conclusion of a Ruination story to life, a story for years had been told exclusively through champions you have already gotten to know over the years. Routing the central perspective of the story through a new, faceless rookie felt like we were stealing the limelight from the roster and distracting from connections between champions you expected. This was exacerbated, thank you words, by dialogue choices, often feeling formulaic and like they didn't lead to meaningful impact. I guess. I didn't really care. Rookie was fine.
Nah, I think they're right.
I don't think that it's not a huge point, but I do think that it would have been a stronger event had it not been focused on a nameless character. I mean, if you're gonna establish character, like if they could have established a new character and brought them in,
Yeah.
Actually, you know what? I think that should have been.
You should have been Akshan, yeah.
That should have been Akshan, and then Lucian should have had to go on a thing, or everyone should have had to go on a thing to get the Absolver, and it shouldn't have.
Yeah, that would have been good.
Yeah, that would have made Akshan a lot more
It makes sense because
likable as a new addition.
In Spirit Blossom, you were like a random spirit that had been going through the motions of other spirits that had done a million things. Faceless people. You were like a random nobody. But a random nobody shouldn't have been taking place in a world-ending event.
Yeah.
Especially when there's so many key players that could
Especially
have been
when
there.
you're a random nobody who has a magic teleport gun that's like a legendary, like, god
Well, I'm saying,
artifact.
when you're dealing with something that has, like, random nobodies taking place, you could put a random nobody in there. But when you're dealing with a world-changing event that has hundreds of important key characters, you don't want to replace one of the most important key characters with a random nobody.
Yeah, it's true.
It's just robbing the perspective from something you could have introduced to character that matters. Even if they're not a pre-existing character, like including Angshan would have been perfect.
Well, for me personally, I didn't mind the inclusion of Rookie. I just minded the, I don't know, I suppose opposite? The fact that they didn't then include Rookie? Like, if that makes sense? It's like they made him a part of the story, but
there's always going to be a faceless character, but if
they've
they're going
still
to be
removed him
relevant
from
against
canon.
fighting Viego, then they should be someone important.
Yeah,
but they're never going to be someone important when they're a self-insert nobody.
That's true, but I feel like they should have, like, take Fire Emblem for example, right? You play as Robin. Like, you're a canon character who has stuff that you do in the game that's canon. And Robin even has a appearance that's canon. They should have just done that for Rookie too. Like,
yeah, but they could have just been Akshan.
It could have just been Akshan.
Then Akshan would have mattered.
Yeah, but also Akshan would have been a completely different character then, which is fine because I don't care about Akshan now.
Written the story like you were from Akshan's perspective.
Yeah, I mean that could be cool. That actually would have probably been cool.
Yeah,
It would have made sense too, because they were like, "Oh, we need a new Sentinel."
And then
They made
Akshan
a
could
new
have
Sentinel.
tumbled.
You know?
Akshan could have taken his hood up and come out of stealth. And would have been like, "Hey, I'm here, baby."
Anyway, faceless player stand-in characters as a tool aren't something we should assume by default when developing visual novels, and that relationship building doesn't have to be the focus of them. Some of you suggested, for example, we could have told Rise of Sentinels through Lucian or Senna's eyes, which still would have given that front seat experience without feeling like a deviation from previous Ruination narratives. Narratively, the Ruination was a bleak story. We wanted to add some lighthearted moments and jokes to ease some of the heaviness and tension since Sentinels was a long event. It's clear we leaned too heavily into comic relief. This created a couple issues. Players felt like there weren't enough serious or neutral responses to choose from Rookie's dialogue choices. For these players, that prevented Rookie from accomplishing their role of feeling like a stand-in for the player. Second, the tone was inconsistent from one scene to the next. Sometimes the story was dead serious with very high stakes, but and other times it was comedy hour. That made it hard to get a feel for what kind of experience Rise of Sentinels was supposed to be. Third, it caused Rise of Sentinels to under-deliver on the stakes and gravity of a global ruination, the first world-level threat that we've introduced in current Runeterra. Our takeaway is that tone needs to be more consistent across an event. When the storyline calls for it, we should be comfortable with things being darker and more serious with only small moments of comedy rather than swaths of it.
I disagree with this point. I think that you can make a dark and serious event, have plenty of comedy, and still have plenty of joy and happiness in it, while still being a dark story. I think it's just you have to pick and choose what parts are the serious versus funny parts, and I think they did a really bad job of that, where they would take these characters and they would just completely gut them by making them act in stupid ways instead of. You can have characters be smart and still have funny moments between them, you know?
That's true.
Like if Olaf wasn't haha funny fart man, but it was more like you could play more on the cultural differences between the different places and still make funny jokes about that, and not just call him a haha funny fart man because it's.
Yeah, they could like be lighthearted and jokey to each other, but not have like entire points of the plot just be like Rengar memes, you know?
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
It's kind of difficult to do, but I don't think their takeaway should just be we should tell
Make
a dark
everything
story in a dark story. Yeah. You know?
I hope that they keep at least a decent amount of, because I think that these overbearingly one tone or one mood stories, they tend to feel like it doesn't really matter if the heroes win or lose at the end, because you don't feel like any compassion for the heroes because they're not likable, and it doesn't feel like the world's going to get any better if everything's bleak already, you know?
Yeah.
I think that actually having
somewhat.
lightheartedness in dark stories is very important, and I hope that they keep at least.
Yeah, that's why there's ragdoll physics in all the Dark Souls games.
Exactly, you know? Well, that's where there's like funny NPCs in the Dark Souls games that, you know, like Potman in Elden Ring. Like that.
Yeah, dude. Pot bro.
Anyway.
Dark Souls is just a funny game, okay?
It kinda is. It's like the most bleak game.
You can't have a sad story without a story, Deb.
You can't have a sad story without there being something that is lost in the first place. It's not sad if everything's terrible the whole time. Then it's just like whatever.
Yeah,
like you have to have the juxtaposition.
Well, I don't necessarily think it's that way in Dark Souls. I mean, it kind of is, which is why the good ending for all the Dark Souls games is just killing the world, because it's just so miserable. But we're not talking about Dark Souls. Anyway.
Yeah.
Mischaracterized champions. All right, this one was pretty important, I think. Let's see what they think. A specific subpoint of the above is that some champions felt like they were being portrayed inaccurately. Specifically, some dialogue options elicited responses like, "My champion wouldn't say that." Several champions were called out as being too cartoonish, with Rengar as the biggest example and Pyke coming up a lot as well. The other frequently highlighted case of problematic characterization was Lucian in the early chapters. We wanted him to feel like his back was up against the wall because of the danger Senna was in, but it came off as cold, angry, and cruel instead. Our takeaway is that even when we're layering event-specific context into champions, they still need to feel true to the core of their previous characterizations. They'll feel unnatural if pushed too far. The previous takeaway regarding tone will also help here, as there'll be less pressure for us to use champions as vehicle to add levity where it wouldn't organically appear in the first place. I don't totally feel like they got it with that one.
I mean, we talked about this already in the previous section.
Yeah, that's true. But, I don't know. Man, it's like... I don't know. It's like, even in an event context, you know, if they're pushed too far, it's unnatural. It's like, yeah, that's true, I guess.
I think them just thinking about it more will get them to where it needs to be. I actually didn't mind Lucian in the beginning. I thought he was fun.
I did. Just because, like, it felt bad to be put into the role of a character who it doesn't matter which option you choose, because Lucian was still gonna call you, like, a stinky loser who has to suck on his dong every 2 seconds.
The counterpoint to that is that all the options that they gave you to respond to him were, like, smart-ass responses anyway. So
that's
it was
kind
like,
of true, yeah.
You were being forced into a specific characterization that he would react to that way, like, pretty much every time.
Yeah,
I mean, it might have been a little bit off, but I think that with a little bit of... If they're thinking about it, they'll get it right, I'm sure.
Yeah,
that one wasn't too bad.
That's fair. I mean, it wasn't that bad later on. It's just at first, Lucian was just very mad. And granted, like...
I think he should have been, and that's what I got. I got what they were going for there. Because it felt like his bank was up against the wall, and he, like, works on his own before, and he only worked with Senna, ever.
Yeah.
And so he was like he's like this stern, cold, hard guy.
That's true.
Like, that's who Lucian is. He's like a down to business, I'm doing this kind of guy. And so I think he should have been kind of reacting like that, because he was posed with this character that had no idea that what was going on, and it was worthless.
Yeah, but that like, wasn't my fault.
I got stuff to do.
You know, it's one thing if they put you in a situation...
And he was also, like, upset because all the Sentinels that he knew and where he had trained were, like, dead.
Well, yeah, but it's... Once again, it's not like he was upset, right? If Lucian was, like, sad, that'd be fine. But, like... When you're put in, like, the cockpit of a character and your only options are, this character doesn't like you, this character doesn't like you, and this character doesn't like you, it kind of just feels like you're being set up for a failure.
That's the problem with Rookie, not with Lucian.
Well, I think it's more of a problem with Rookie. I think it could have been cool if Lucian didn't like you at first, and then over time, he gained your respect. Mm-hmm. But that's also not what happened.
No, not really. But, yeah, fair enough. Overly complex metagame systems. Rise of the Sentinels featured 10 Sentinels, each of which two progression mechanics, depending on the order you recruited them in. The in-client hub sent players from Central Chamber to character bio pages to the world map to region maps. For many players, this complexity created too high of a barrier to get into the event. As one particularly frustrating call-out, some of you who played a ton of games in one sitting returned to Sentinels have to find that your progress was lost because you unknowingly completed a region partway through the session and didn't know you had to choose another region to keep earning points. I could see why that would annoy people, but I definitely never ran into that issue.
That happened to me a couple times, because I'd play like 4 or 5 games in a day, and I'd complete my area on like the second game, and then I'd play another 3 games, and I'd realize, oh, I've just not been getting any points this whole time.
Yeah.
I didn't run into the issue where I lost points, but I ran into the issue where I was like, I wanted to play more games, but instead I was just gonna read. I had to read a thing for like 20 minutes while you guys were just sitting there waiting for me. Yeah. And I was like, I need to do this or I'm gonna lose points.
That's true.
And I would have rather just have not been playing, just continued playing and then just read it.
Then built them up so you
later.
could just read them more later. Yeah.
I think that's a good idea.
That's something that I had an issue with as well, but I assume that's something they're planning on doing.
And once again, that's just a little thing. I don't think this is one of the big reasons why.
No, not at all.
This was considered.
No, that's like a tiny.
Streamline the design of
Like,
future metagames, both mechanically and in terms of interface and experiences. Doesn't mean less metagame content overall. Just the metagame content needs to be less confusing. Sentinels of Light was the capstone to our first multi-month story arc, our first big immersive lore event on PC in years. Yeah, literally the only one they did before this was the Gangplank event, and that one was sick.
No, there was a Lysandra event.
Oh yeah, the Three Sisters event. Yeah, that's where you got the
That was pretty
icons.
cool.
Remember that?
Mhm.
It was okay.
I mean, there wasn't a lot
that
going
cool.
on there, but that one was like the first one.
Yeah. Our first lore event across multiple products at Riot. While there were a lot of things we could have done better, we do think there were things that went well. Still happy to have launched an event at the same tier of scale as Spirit Blossom, including Ultimate Spellbook, our first new event game mode in years, and our first coordinated champion release across 4 Riot games at once. It's a little cliche to say, the sheer amount of feedback we heard from you and the depth and care reflected in that feedback proved to us that there is an appetite for us to do more with leagues, universe, and champions. Yeah, no crap. Lore events in League of Legends are not dead. Yeah, of course they're not. What kind of... Nah, it's fine. We hope this post encourages those of you who were let down by Sentinels and that our takeaways line up with what you'd like to see us do better next time. See you in 2022.
Honestly,
Riot Reeve, 84 slashes.
My biggest problem with this, I think the one thing you need to consider about this is that there were 4 champions from this event that were added in the game. Not a single one for Arcane. Which was bigger for the game?
You're right.
Right?
You're right.
Like, Arcane is a much bigger
What are you
landmark.
talking about? They added Jinx.
Oh yeah, my
They
bad.
added
I
Fire.
Oh yeah, all those characters.
Yeah, dude, you're right. Bro, those characters weren't in the game before.
It would have been nice. I think also part of the problem was just the entire delays with the rollout. The Rune King game was supposed to come out before this event happened. It didn't. Vex was supposed to come out as one of the first characters. They didn't. Like the characters were rolled out in awkward timings. The just the event was like it wasn't planned ahead of time enough for all the timings to actually line up properly. I think that kind of lost a lot of impact too because of that. Anybody else have anything?
Yeah, I mean,
Release auction.
yeah, I agree. Screw that character. Bro, it feels so bad when you get like a quad and then Akshan just like barely like gimmicks you and then he revives his whole team. The character needs to be thrown in the dumpster.
Gameplay mechanics aside, because you know, like
you're completely fair.
Those have nothing to do with the event. Really.
Yeah.
Those are just, you gotta blame the balance team on that.
Akshan is a miss at all levels. He's lame. I hate his design. He doesn't have any founding in the story. His implementation in the event was garbage. His kit blows.
Damn, you get him.
Like,
bro, Akshan would beat you up in real life. I'm just saying.
Whatever. Let him.
Anyway, I know who Reeve is. This is a name that comes up a lot in the Riot community. I don't know who 84 Slashes is, but, you know, thanks to both of you for making this post. Yep, that's pretty much it. See y'all later.
Get Thresh out of that shoulder.